Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Brandley.
And I'm Alicia Coakley. Every member of the church has a story to share, one that can instill faith, invite growth, and inspire others.
On today's episode, we're going to hear a hilarious story about how a date gone wrong, timing that was right, and an unshakable trust in the promptings of the Spirit brought two people together forever. Welcome to Latter-day Lights.
Well, hello. Have we got a show for you guys? We told everyone last week that today's story will have you laughing so hard that you just might pee your pants, and we were not kidding. We are honored to have the ever hilarious Cameron Daley joining us today. Cameron, thank you for being our guest.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me on.
For those of you who don't know, Cameron, personally, you're really missing out. He's such a positive force for good, and he loves making people laugh. He used to actually be one of my counselors when I was a bishop, and he made every one of our meetings interesting and fun. So we're glad to have him here.
Thank you. It's funny. About 5 years ago, I was a lot funnier, but something happened that a lot of people refer to as growing a filter. So I've never had a filter before, but something happened. I think it's pretty cool that even at my age, I can continue to grow and learn.
That's awesome. And I'm so sad that I don't live close by anymore, because truly, Cameron, you and your family, you guys are just some of the best people that I have ever met. I remember
Thank you so much.
The first time that you shared this story. Yeah, the first time you shared this story in Sacrament, I was just like, those are my people. That's the kind of people I want to have in my life.
oh my gosh.
It was awesome. So I'm just super excited about you being able to share it again, and this time to even more people, because the world, they need this story. Yeah. They do.
You know what? Seriously, no spoilers or anything, but when I was telling this story over the pulpit in that sacrament meeting, I remember thinking to myself, how many times can I say the word pee before Bishop Brandley taps me on the shoulder and tells me to sit down? I got away with quite a few. I don't know that you ever did. So yeah,
you did.
No, but when I was listening to the story, I could see where it was going. I don't know if you heard me. I'm like, I covered my eyes. I'm like, oh no. I knew what you were going to say, even though I'd never heard the story before.
No, it was funny because I could hear you chuckling over my left shoulder, and I just kept saying, as long as I continue to hear Bishop Brandley chuckle, I'm going to keep going. But as soon as those chuckles stop, I'm going to stop. Right? Okay, so.
Yeah. Well, and I remember you started introducing your family and everything, because you guys were newer to our board, and all of a sudden you look back at Betsy and you just, can I share it? And she goes, okay, okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm like sitting on the edge of my seat.
What's coming?
It was,
yeah, for sure.
Perfect. Yeah.
Well, Cameron, why don't we start by having you tell the listeners, a little bit about yourself.
I was born in Arizona, lived most of my life in northern Utah, moved up to Utah when I was about 5. Just celebrated my 20th anniversary in this last September, married for 20 years. 3 kids. The oldest is serving his mission right now in Korea. My 16-year-old, Boston, crashed his car on his birthday about 90 minutes after getting his driver's license, and a 14-year-old daughter who talks about her birthday about 360 days a year. Usually December 26th, she's talking about what she wants for her birthday. So that's pretty typical from what I understand. I retired from law enforcement about 2 years ago, and I recently started teaching 5th grade. I'm a 5th grade teacher. So.
Wow. Yeah, I remember. Awesome. I remember when you retired. I mean, you retired really early, really young.
I did.
And yeah. I remember having those conversations. You were asking, like, what should I do now with my life? So you ended up being a teacher.
Honestly,
so.
There was one point when I was talking to you in the clerk's office, and I was like, I think I'm going to go be a mailman. That sounds like fun. I can just walk around, relax, get some sun. And you looked at me and you were like, Do you feel like that's a job where you are using all of the talents that Heavenly Father has blessed you with? And I was
Uh,
like, well, no, Bishop, it
Scott.
isn't. So thanks. Now I can't be a mailman. I got to figure out something else to do. Yeah,
Darn Scott pushing people to
I
be
know.
better. Jeez.
Seriously.
I'm sorry, man.
Oh. Well, I think that it's awesome that you're a fifth grade teacher. My favorite teacher in the whole world was my fifth grade teacher, Mr. Wright. So I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of kiddos that are going to be
Have
like,
good
oh,
memories.
well,
I
I
hope
loved
so.
Mr. Daley.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I really do hope
Yeah,
so.
I bet they will. Well, and I assume that you know, being a fifth grade teacher, you must have had some type of preparation for this ahead of time when you were going to college, correct?
Yeah. I went back to school right after I retired and got my bachelor's in English and minor in criminal justice,
Okay.
and then jumped right into teaching. It's funny because during back to school night, there was a mom that came up and she's like, "So, what? How long have you been teaching?" I'm like, "Oh, this is my first year." She was like, "Oh, what did you do before this?" And I said, "Oh, I just retired after 20 years in law enforcement." She's like, "So you pretty much chose to do the two most difficult jobs in the entire world just back to back?" I was like, "Well, I don't know yet. I haven't been a fifth grade teacher before, but I'll be able to tell you in a year or two." So it's been great, though. I love it.
There you go.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, why don't you go ahead and bring us back to your first time in college? That's where your story kind of begins, right?
Yes. It begins right around college age. It was right as I was getting home from my mission. And the counsel missionaries receive as they come home is, usually mission presidents or say, well, it's time to start this next chapter, right? It's time to start looking for an eternal companion. Um, so I was on the hunt, I think, like most returned missionaries. I was fortunate though. I had a I had a friend, and we decided we were going to buy this house together in an effort to not have to pay our own rent. We were going to buy this house and rent out all the rooms. So we essentially had this house where there were 9 of us, 9 guys. And all of us, well, most of us, probably 6 of the 9 were returned missionaries, but we were all about the same age, going to the singles ward. And we started hosting these parties, right? Like we call it survivor parties, really. We would just have everyone come over on Thursday, watch Survivor. This was 20 years ago, so it was like season 2, I think, of Survivor. And I think we just finished up season 40. So yeah, it's been a while. So we're having all these people over, and we had this philosophy, like, you know what we should do? We should, all 9 of us, invite every girl you know to the house, right? And some of us were like, well, but there's a couple of girls that aren't really my type. I don't really want, but we just kept saying, listen, there are 9 guys here. They're going to be someone's type. Like, everyone just invite every girl you know. So it was, just invite everybody you know, all these girls that you know, right? We loved the ratio. There was always more girls than guys, which we loved, of course. But as all these people are kind of coming and going from my house, I keep thinking about my patriarchal blessing, right? Because, as a missionary, you read it a lot, and as you're preparing for that next chapter, right, you're also reading and reviewing it. And mine said something I felt like pretty unique. I haven't read a whole lot of patriarchal blessings, but people that I've shared this with, have made it sound like it was pretty unique. It says about my eternal companion. It says, "You will one day meet a young lady, and will instantly know who she is, for she is meant for you, and you will go to the temple and be sealed for time and all eternity." Right? Like,
That's incredible.
that was pretty big.
Wow.
And so, of course,
awesome.
yeah. So I see this, and I'm like, oh, instantly is pretty awesome. That means I can, like, go to a park, sit on a bench, right? Introduce myself to girls as they walk by. And when I shake the hand of the girl I'm supposed to be with, I will just know instantly, right? That's kind of what I thought. But anyway, so I went to my bishop because I didn't really know how long I should date a girl before the instantly was out the window, right? Like, so I went to my bishop and said, "What does this mean?" And I told him about my blessing, and he said, "Cameron, I'm not really qualified or authorized to interpret your blessing, but I really hope you don't think it means you can just go sit on a park bench and watch girls walk by and introduce yourself." And as he's saying this, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is exactly what I was thinking I should be able to do. So anyway, one day I'm at my house, this house of these 9 guys, and one of my roommates invites this girl over who had served in his mission, the Cincinnati, Ohio mission. And her name was Betsy. And she came into the room, and there were like 4 of us that were sitting on the couch. His name's Abe, as Abe walked in with this girl, Betsy. He's like, "Hey, everybody, this is Betsy." And I was like, holy cow. Who is this? This is like the hottest chick I've ever seen in my entire life, right? I have no idea. Like, all I know is she is the hottest girl I've ever seen. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, like, I keep telling Abe, I'm like, "Abe, you got to invite Betsy over." And every time he does, this is how see how I'm acting right now? Like, I can't even put sentences together when she's in the same room, right? Like, I can be sitting there having a conversation with 10 people, and she will walk in, and I seriously, like, will have to stop mid-sentence and just leave, right? It is the weirdest. I've never experienced it before. I was so intimidated. I was so scared. She was so out of my league. I just knew, like, there's no way. Like, I can never talk to this girl, right?
So I have to ask real quick. Did she think that you were a weirdo? Like, or was she just sweet Betsy to you?
Don't we all kind of think
Did
that he's a
did she just
weirdo,
ignore you?
Alicia?
How did that?
You know what? I honestly, there were so many people there at any given moment. I just assumed, like, she doesn't even realize that I'm there, right? I just leave, right? And she's always talking to someone else. There's just so much is going on. There was one day, it was about 3:00 in the morning. Everybody had gone home, and I'm in the basement with my best friend, John. And I'm like, "John, dude, like, I'm embarrassed. Like, I don't, how many times is Betsy going to come over? Like, she's single right now. Like, Abe has told me that she does not have a boyfriend, right? I'm going to miss my window. Like, I've got to do something," right? It was just this overwhelming feeling of, I'm gonna miss this. Like, I gotta take this opportunity. It's right here, right? And John tells me later, he's like, I knew, Cameron, like, when you said that, I'd never seen you like that before. And as my best friend, he was like, I knew I was going to lose you. Like, this was it. Right. So I'm like, I'm calling her in the morning, out of my comfort zone. I'm calling this girl. I don't care what happens. I got to get it out there. This is driving me crazy. So the next morning, I call Betsy. I get her number from Abe. She answers the phone, and I say, "Betsy, this is Cameron. You were at my house last night. You probably don't know who I am. Did you know it? I'm not sure if you noticed, but every time you came in the room, I had to leave." And she's like, "What? No, who? I don't know what you're talking about." And I'm like, "Well, let me just I've got to just say a couple things here. I know, like, I don't know how else to describe how, like, I feel like you are this goddess that I have." And she's like, and she's like, "What? Like, what?" And I'm like, just let me finish. Please, Betsy, just let me finish. The only way I can describe this is like a crush. Like, it's just massive, huge crush. I've never really talked to you. I feel like it doesn't even really have to be a date. Like if I can just have like a real conversation with you in person and realize that, I think I've just got you on this pedestal and I can't even be myself around you. I don't know. I'm so intimidated. And then I hear like giggles, right? And I'm like, okay,
Oh.
I think I might be on the right track here, right? So anyway, I'm like, listen, can we just like go hang out sometime? And of course, right after that conversation, she's like, well, of course, Cameron. And again, I'm not really sure she even knows who I am, but I think she respected the honesty. I don't know.
I'm surprised you didn't
So,
hang up and call the
am I
police
moving
after
to?
that.
Right, I know. Seriously, right?
No,
Like,
you're not
who
going
is
too
this
fast
dude?
at all.
I don't know if I'm going too fast with the story or not. I hope I'm not going too slow. I don't know. So,
No, you're good.
okay. So the next Sunday. Oh, this is what I said to her on the phone. I'm like, hey, Betsy, I'm not sure how you feel about Sunday dates. We can go somewhere. We don't have to spend any money. It doesn't, just hang out, go on a picnic or something, if that's okay. And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. That sounds great. That sounds like fun. So I asked her a couple, like, what do you drink? She's like, oh, I like Diet Coke. I'm like, okay, great. So I start preparing for this picnic, this Sunday picnic. Um, and I cut up lemons and I have them in this little Tupperware so she can add it to her Diet Coke if that's how she likes her Diet Coke, right? And I have like Cheetos and like pudding packs and some sandwiches, and I've prepared everything, but I've kept it all separate because I don't know what she likes on her sandwich, right? Like I have never been more prepared for a date in my entire life. Like I wanted that picnic to be the most perfect. Anyway, so we go to Layton City Park, right across from Layton High School. This is, by the way, this is September 2nd. September
Okay.
2nd, 2001. And we're sitting on this blanket, we're eating, and we get to the dessert. And seriously, like things are going so well. Like I don't know. I can't even really explain it. I think this date is going better than I ever could have imagined, right? And we have the pudding packs, right? And I think it's at this point in my talk, by the way, when I was sharing this over the pulpit, that I looked to Betsy and I was like, hey, is it cool if I like share the like the rest of this story, right? She's like, well, yeah, right. Remember, yeah,
Yep.
it's at this point.
Yep. It was
So
just okay. Like she
so
just knows that
yeah,
you love
here it
sharing this
comes.
story.
Here it comes, right? So I start eating this pudding pack, right? And she's kind of eating hers. I'm like, hey, Betsy, you know what? We should race and see who can eat our pudding packs the fastest, right? And she's like, no, Cameron, no. If I eat my pudding too fast, I will gag. Like I have this gag reflex, right? I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I understand. And I take this huge bite and then I fake gag, right? Right. But she thinks it's a real gag. So she starts laughing, right? Because I've just gagged on my pudding, she thinks. Well, I think that she knows it's a fake gag. So I do it again, right? Because I'm like, oh, look, I'm making the hottest girl in the world laugh out loud. Like, this is
Right.
like, I'm on cloud nine, right? Like, right. So then I do it again and she starts laughing even harder. And then she says, Cameron, you've got to stop taking such big bites of your pudding because I'm laughing so hard and I might pee my pants. Like I really have to go to the bathroom, right? I'm like, okay, Betsy, no, that's fine. I'll stop. I'm so sorry. There's a bathroom over here when we finish, right? So then I take one more bite and I fake gag again. And she starts laughing harder than she had, right? She's laughing so hard. And then I'm watching her like this is the most beautiful situation I could ever be in, right? I'm eating pudding. She's laughing. My eternal companion sitting across from me, right? This is so awesome. And then her laughter, like it was like this. She's okay, I'll try and do it, right? She's like, laughing. Right? Then it's like a right. And when this happens, I know like
She just stops.
something's just happened. She's like, Cameron, I just peed my pants. I'm like, there's
Oh
no
my
way.
God.
No, you didn't. Please, no, you didn't. Right? And she like rocks up a little bit and looks down, and it's like, you know how like you're laughing really hard, a little dribble, right?
Yeah.
This is like she has drained her entire bladder on the blanket. It is like it is sopping wet. She has peed all over the place. Okay.
I would have died. I would
Yeah.
like as a girl, I'm just telling you, like that would have been the most I would never see you again. That's
Yeah.
just I couldn't. That wouldn't work. That's awful.
And
Oh my
really
gosh.
that was my fear. And she kept saying, she's like, oh my gosh, Cameron, I cannot believe I just peed my pants. I really need you to take me home. I need to change. This is really uncomfortable. And I'm like, no, Betsy, really, no. It's flattering. It's super flattering. I made you laugh so hard that you peed your pants. Like, I feel like this is a compliment to me. Thank you for laughing so hard, right? And she's like, okay, that's nice, but seriously, like, I feel really uncomfortable. And every time she said she was uncomfortable and felt like she wanted to go change, I just kept thinking, this is it. Like, this is the end of this perfect date. Like, I'm going to take her home. She's so embarrassed. Like, this is going to be the end. Right. And I couldn't let the date end like that. And I just kept saying, Betsy, no, it's no big deal. It's just pee. Like, it is just pee. It's seriously not a big deal. Right. She's like, no, Cameron, please take me home. And so I did the only thing that I could do at that moment to salvage this perfect date. I got up onto my knees, right? And keep in mind, I'm wearing beige shorts, right? And I say, Betsy, it's just pee. Look, watch, right? And I look down and I just drain my bladder. Like I just pee as much pee as I can, right? And she's like sitting there in a puddle of her own pee. Now remember, I've said pee like 15 times already, and this is like over the pulpit when I'm telling this, right? She is
Yes.
Oh
like
yeah.
sitting in a puddle of her pee, watching me pee, and the pee's like running down my legs, pooling around my knees, right? Like I'm like, see, it's seriously not a
Oh
big
my
deal.
God.
And she has this look on her face like, what is happening, right? And then I finish peeing. I'm like, see, I told you, it's not a big deal. There's a stream over there. We can just both go sit in the stream so it doesn't look like, so you don't have a big wet spot and I don't have big wet streaks down both legs. Like, we'll just go sit in the stream and no one will even know any different, right? So we stand up and we start walking
Oh my
toward the
gosh.
stream. And Betsy says to me, I cannot believe that you peed your pants for me. And at that moment, I was like, oh, neither can I, really, but that was the best and only thing I could have done, right?
Yeah.
And then 3 more times, she said, I cannot believe you peed your pants for me.
That's true love right there.
Which is crazy because I know, and Cameron, I mean, kudos too, because who would think of that as a solution?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
who would think, I'm going to make this less embarrassing by peeing? And who can pee on command? I don't know. So that
Right,
was just, that is true love. You're right, Scott. Scott's totally right. That is true love. I personally don't believe in soulmates, but I'm going to make an exception for you and Betsy. That was,
You know, funny
That
you
was
say that.
awesome.
Funny you say that. One little side note. Oh wait, what's the best order to tell this? Okay. So 2 days after this date, right? So the date finishes. It's awesome. It's like the best date ever. I take her home. I start the police academy. No, I was already working at a halfway house, but I was going back to the academy to get trained as a full-fledged law enforcement, right? So I'm scheduled to start the academy on Monday. Monday was a holiday, though. I remember that. So I didn't start till Tuesday. What's the holiday that's the beginning of September? What is that, like Labor Day? Probably Labor Day or something, right? Anyway.
Labor Day, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So Tuesday, I call her first day of the law enforcement police academy, and I'm like, hey, I really had a lot of fun on our date, and I want to tell you what my patriarchal blessing says. She's like, okay. So I tell her what it says, that I will one day meet a young lady and will instantly know who she is, for she is meant for me, right?
Mhm.
And I said, I feel like you are that person. And and this is just a reflection of how well the date went, right? Because I wouldn't have done this, like, it wasn't just that I peed because to make her feel better. That it was it was everything about that date, right? Like the feeling that was, like, everything about it. The pee is a great story, but there was something special about that date, right? And she felt it too.
Right.
And she said, I think I'm that person too. And then she proceeded to tell me about a blessing that her home teacher had given her about 2 weeks before our date. The home teacher came over, and I think she'd requested the blessing for some stuff she was going through. And um, the home teacher gave her a blessing. And the blessing said that you will meet your husband in the near future. So after the blessing, he left, and she, of course, right, thinks what everyone thinks in those situations, which is, well, near future in Heavenly Father's time could be the next life, right? Like that's kind of how
Right.
we're taught to, like, this could mean anything, right? So she was like, okay, whatever near future means, I don't know, who knows, right? But her home teacher called her the next day and said, hey, this might seem kind of weird, but I just keep thinking about that blessing I gave you yesterday. And I want you to know that when I said that you're going to meet your husband in the near future, I meant that in a very literal sense. Like, in the very near future, you're going to meet your husband. And so I feel like that blessing combined with my patriarchal blessing, and then those two priesthood blessings colliding on our first date, and how everything just went the way it should have gone. So, of course, once we decide we're going to get married, I have to ask permission from her parents. And I have met them once when I picked her up for our first date 3 days earlier, right? so
Right.
Oh my gosh.
you can imagine the awkwardness that I'm preparing myself for. And I went in and sat at the table with her mom and dad. She was there too. And we talked about how we felt like we should get married. And her dad told me to bear my testimony to him. So I did.
Really?
Yeah. And
Wow.
it was a very honest testimony. It was a testimony of everything I felt strongly about, and I was honest about those things that I was still wondering about. But I felt like he appreciated and respected the honesty. And when I finished my testimony, he said, "You have my blessing."
Wow.
So
Wow.
then we went.
Okay.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I'm just thinking. Now, did you learn something from your father-in-law? Is this something that you're going to continue on when your kiddos
No.
are ready to, get married to? No.
I don't know.
I think that's amazing.
I
though.
I hope
what
I'm
an
as loving
interview.
and accepting as he was. Like, seriously, like, he was so awesome. Like, and her mom too. But when we went and talked to my bishop, so this is where it gets really kind of down and dirty, right? So as I was talking with her about getting married, she was like, "Hey, you know what, Cameron? And we talked about a lot of this on our first date. Remember, how I mentioned we were talking about really deep, like, personal things on our first date. That's how well the date was going. It was almost like we were just bearing our souls on this first date. So when we decided to get married, we both knew that we were in a situation where we probably wouldn't be able to go to the temple right away. We would have to wait, right? So Betsy had had a period of time that she had to wait. So I went in to my bishop and I said, okay, here's the situation. I've decided to marry this girl. Betsy wasn't with me in this appointment, but I said, I've decided to marry this girl. She's got a period of time she has to wait before she can go to the temple. I assume that the things that I've talked with you about recently is probably going to make it so I'm not able to go to the temple right away. And he said, yeah, you're probably going to need to wait. And I said, okay, so we've decided that we're going to get married in a year. And my bishop said, he said, why would you do that to yourself? Why would you put yourself through that kind of temptation for a year if you know that this is the person that you're going to marry? Why are you waiting a year? Just get married now and get sealed. And I said, well, the goal since we were kids, we're taught, like, get married in the temple, get married in the temple, be worthy to get married in the temple, and we're not worthy to get married in the temple right now. And he said, Cameron, do you think the blessings of the temple are any different for someone who gets married in the temple versus someone who gets sealed in the temple a year later? I said, no, the blessings are the same. And he said, then you should not wait. If you know that this is who you're going to marry, you should get married now and get sealed later. So we did. First date was September 2nd. We got married September 29th. So like 3 weeks later.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I know. And I feel worse for
20 years later.
Yeah.
Now.
I feel worse for Betsy's mom because when
Wow.
I was asking Dad for permission, he was like, yeah, you have my blessing. And I look over at Mom and her mind is like, how am I planning this in 3 weeks? Right? Like, how is this going to work?
Oh, man.
Yeah. And, you know, of course, you got friends that are like, you guys have known each other for 3 days. You're getting married after 3 weeks. I give this marriage 6 months tops, right? Like, that's it. Like, there's no way this is going to work. And we just, like I said,
Doubting Thomases.
Celebrated our 20 years. Yeah. So.
Wow.
That's incredible.
I know. And, you know,
Oh, man.
It's, and I didn't, some of this information might even be new to you guys. I don't know that I shared all of this. I'm sure I didn't in my talk in Sacramento.
That was brand new information.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that, Cameron. I mean, that takes some vulnerability, which I really appreciate you being willing to share, because I think it's important for other members of the church to realize that not everybody's perfect and people make mistakes. But God has a plan for everyone. And that's really important.
And I think it's awesome that you and Betsy were both at a place where you knew that you guys wanted to progress. And so in your getting married, you know, first and then getting sealed later on, it kind of, you guys were really on that same page where like you both genuinely wanted to go to the temple. Mm-hmm. You know, you both genuinely wanted to become closer to Heavenly Father and to become more of who it is that you guys were meant to be. And I think that that coupled with the fact that you guys had received blessings, you know, patriarchal blessings and blessings from Betsy's home teacher and stuff. I think when we're really working hard to kind of be on that path that our Heavenly Father has laid out for us, things really do work out really well, you know, and you get this sense of peace and surety in your decisions. And you might be a little like, oh man, I wonder if I'm doing the right thing. But ultimately deep down, you kind of know that you are. And I love that you actually went and you talked to your bishop about it too. And that he was able to give you this guidance to, you know, to not wait and to move forward. Because that's not always the thing that we're told, right? You know, sometimes people are telling us that it's best just to wait until we go to the temple. And I just think I don't know, I just love your story. I just think it's amazing that you and Betsy both followed so much counsel and really took those promptings that you got from the Spirit and ran with them. Ran
Yeah,
hard.
and it's funny because I was telling Betsy that about this we were going to be recording this podcast, and she said, you know what, we should try and find, because I don't even remember the name of the bishop. I can't remember his name. I'm like, we should find our marriage license because he's the one that married us, and get in touch with him and let him know that we're still married 20 years later. Because I kind of wonder if he was like performing the ceremony like, oh, good luck, guys. Like it's been like 2 weeks. Like you guys, yeah, right. Like, I don't know. I feel like I want him to know that his counsel was right on. And I also wonder if he would have given that counsel because he spoke truth, right? Everything he said was true about the blessings of the temple. And I find myself wondering how many bishops point that out and how many say you should wait. I don't know. But I know that counsel was right for us in that moment.
I think there's some inspiration there, Cameron, because I don't know if that would be the default thing to say to most people. I think he was probably inspired to say that just because of who you were, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's good to know. That's good insight from a bishop, right? Because I've always wondered that. That's interesting.
Because there were several times where like something would come into my mind and I would, say it, and it was specific for that circumstance where I don't know if I would have said that normally. So,
yeah.
But man, what a fun story. It was almost as good hearing it the second time as the first time.
Sorry, I hope I didn't dominate too much there. I love the story so much, and I love sharing it. So
thank you so much for coming on and sharing that with us. And hopefully, you've helped inspire some other people. Another thing that I really like about your story is how the priesthood and your patriarchal blessing came into play. It's a funny story, but it's interesting how, that side of it ties in. And your patriarchal blessing and the priesthood carried through to you eventually getting sealed in the temple and having this amazing family. And your family is really awesome. And there is something special about your family, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Cameron. You are definitely invited back anytime. I'm sure you have other stories.
Yeah, I do. I'll have a lot.
You and Betsy both. So. Maybe we'll just throw you on here. You'll just be our third co-host. Huh?
Yeah.
Sure, let's do
it. Well, thanks again. Awesome. And for everyone watching today, thank you once again for tuning in and listening to this podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure that you head over and leave a comment on our Facebook page, or share or like this podcast, and tell your friends about it, because that's how we're going to get the word out and really bring light to other people's lives.
Yes, please. And as always, if you have a story that you would like to share that can instill faith, invite growth, or inspire others, be sure to head over to our website as well, latterdaylights.com, and you can apply to be on the show.
Right. So stay tuned next week as we share another amazing episode with you and share another story that hopefully will lighten your life and the lives of others. Till then, have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.